Now I'm looking.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our poker norming session. Thank you all for being here today. I hope that you were all able to attend the first hour, which was a webinar open to everyone and anyone. And that's where we gave you all an update on the new rubric. I hope you're not able to hear that dinging on my background. And okay, good. Sorry, my computer. I hope you were all able to attend that first hour webinar where we gave everyone an update on the rubric. Um, so what we're gonna do is kind of continue the conversation and go in a little bit deeper with the new rubric. So before we start, well, actually, yes, before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Xochitl Tirado. I am a distance education coordinator at Imperial Valley College, and I'm also a faculty mentor with CVC. And I'm going to let Maria Elena introduce herself.
My name is Maria Elena Fernandez, and I'm the DE and Instructional Design Coordinator at College of the Siskiyous and the faculty mentor with CVC at one.
All right. So these norming sessions have the intent of the norming sessions are really to come together as a group and talk about different rubric elements to make sure that we're all reviewing courses at the same level. Um, Now, because of the changes in the rubric that will be coming soon, the new version of the rubric, it's a little bit strange to have these sessions so, however, they're still very important. And what we want to do, since this is the last session before the kickoff of that new rubric, is we want to focus in a little bit more on what you will be seeing in the new rubric. And we're going in a little bit deeper with you all because you all are really the people that are most involved in DE, in course design, in reviewing courses at all of our colleges. So we understand that the changes being made to the rubric are most going to affect the work that you all do. So we want to take the time to give you more content um, on what you'll be seeing and also give you some extra time to process some of these changes that are going to happen. So let me go ahead and I'm going to share my PowerPoint because that's going to allow me to stay on track. This is a regular Zoom meeting. It's not a webinar. Thank goodness, because those webinars are a little strange. I don't know if you've ever hosted one. So please feel free to drop questions in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions because it's so nice to be able to interact. Again, that webinar platform, you guys, it's like, is anyone hearing me? Is anyone there? It's really weird. So I'm happy to see at least pictures here of everyone, if not live video feed. That's always great. All right. So, welcome everyone. We're so glad that you're here. Thank you for making the time to be here. This session is being recorded, and once the captions are put in the recording, it will be uploaded into our poker website. Okay. So that's where you can find our norming sessions. Um, Maria Elena she has dropped in a sign-in sheet for you all to fill out to put your names by your college. So please go ahead and do that, and she'll be dropping it in a few more times. Okay, so our agenda for today is we just have two things that we're going to cover. This session is an hour long because we counted that first hour as hour one. This is hour two. Normally, these sessions are 2 hours about. So we want to cover two things today. And as I mentioned, the focus is going to be mostly on the new rubric. So the first thing that we want to cover is we're going to present accessibility. So thinking about accessibility and course review. And then we also want to cover about making sure that our courses are aligned across 100% of a course. And what does that look like for the work that we're doing as poker leads, as poker reviewers? And then just a reminder that our next norming session will be fall 2026. I don't have a date yet, but you will receive an email by the end of this semester. Marilyn and I will work on dates, and typically we have these 4 times a year, twice a semester. This year we cut back to 2 a year, just because of all of the other work that Marilyn and I are doing with the rubric. But next academic year, we're going to go back to our regular cadence of 4 times a year. So just be aware of that and be on the lookout for that. And I will send those dates before the end of the semester. I'll probably send you all 4 dates so you can block those days off in your calendar. And then the invitations will go out. Okay, so let's start with accessibility and course review. That's going to be our first topic of the day. Okay, and I apologize because I haven't looked at this PowerPoint since last week. Marilyn and I did not think we were going to present the first hour. So it kind of like threw us off a bit. So please bear with us. Okay, so one of the big changes to the new rubric is going to be accessibility. So as you know, in our current rubric, section D is accessibility. That section has been completely removed. Um, Now what we're going to be doing with this new rubric, we have embedded accessibility in our new sections 1 through 4. So when you get a hold of the new rubric and look at sections 1 through 4, there are going to be elements of accessibility in different parts of the rubric. So we did try to infuse it within the rubric. We did the same with equity. So there is equity language infused in elements of the rubric as well as accessibility. The most important shift here for accessibility is that it's no longer a separate checklist. It is going to be part of alignment in the rubric.
There's a question.
Oh,
Julie,
sure.
we'll just answer that live as we go through because I
Yeah.
think that's an important question.
Uh-huh.
The last session we talked about section 0. And so when we say that accessibility has been removed, we are saying that it is section 0, and the rubric is sections 1 through 4. So the design rubric incorporates sections 1 through 4, accessibility and design cleanup and all the course prep that we have done previously is now sort of housed within section 0. So I think, I hope, Julie, did that answer your question? Accessibility is not gone. It is now just a focus in itself called section 0.
Okay, so thanks. Just to clarify, when we see the new rubric, there will be a section labeled 0 accessibility.
That probably not. Although we haven't. Yes, I think you correct me on this, but I want to say it's a nominal section. It doesn't have a place for aligned, incomplete, but there's other elements and other areas where you will be responsible for ensuring accessibility. But section 0 is sort of by itself a precursor, a prerequisite in some ways, depending on your process.
So yeah, so to try my best to clarify this.
Nancy, there'll be a section 0, and I know it's like there section 0 is accessibility. There is a section 0, but where you place section 0 is your campus decision. Some campuses put it before review. Some put it in the review, like it's within the review. If you want, we're not saying how to do it. We're just saying this is over here now. Does that, I know it probably, I know, it's confusing.
So,
Yes, we removed the section D, like that checklist. That's gone.
yeah, so that checklist is gone. And
Yes, Nancy.
what section zero is going to do, it's a different training. Exactly. So the way that section zero is designed, the way we envision it, but every process is different at each college.
Mhm.
Okay. But the way that we envision it in a perfect world, section zero is front loaded. And part of that section zero is accessibility. So it's having the instructor think through their accessibility. And there is a process where we do provide like a remediation plan. So like, let's say that,
So actually, Sochi, the next slide,
oh, it's going to talk
we'll
about
talk
that.
exactly about this.
Okay.
So yes, what is section zero? So thanks everyone for all these questions because we have run through all these questions with the work group in our brains one-on-one. So the supporting structure for accessibility, if you will, because we recognize that some colleges have a supporting structure and some do not. So it depends on each campus. And Nancy, I think hopefully we'll answer your question in a second. So the Section Zero readiness course is an optional course adoption. So we're creating an actual course called Section Zero in Canvas readiness. And the 3 required steps that we envision are part of the course preparation that has been sort of an underpinning of course review for as long as I can think of. So the course is designed in 3 sort of required steps. And one is completing a backward design document. What are your, using backward design to then clean up your course and your course processes. And then from there, the accessibility plan and remediation workflow would be that final step. Consistently across the board, we hear the issue of faculty, getting through a course review, and then all of a sudden they're hit with this huge boulder of accessibility that just slams them, and they're just, I can't do this anymore, and they're tired, or they don't want to continue. They'll do everything except accessibility. So we've heard that throughout, and accessibility can be an excessive workload if the course is not clean, if the course isn't really ready to sort of be reviewed, if there's extraneous material, if there's stuff that you're having to remediate, or images that are not necessary, or tables. I mean, there's so much in the course cleanup process that will facilitate and make that accessibility plan and remediation workflow maybe more manageable. And I think the key takeaway here in this section 0, or whatever your campus might call it, is Nancy, you mentioned that you have a training, and yes, and you may want to incorporate this, infuse this, or just use yours alone. Or yeah, you can use section 0 however you see fit at your campus. So I would mention that. I mean, I would make sure that POCR leads are really aware that this is an optional course adoption. It's not required, but it's a critical resource for ensuring your reviewers are not overloaded with their work as well. And I think it's a good first win for your faculty too. If they can get through this process, then the confidence that they'll have going into review will be so much higher. And I think that, again, the key here is that accessibility is ensured through our institutional processes, that we push it back onto the institution, so that POCR isn't the only place where accessibility is ensured, right? It's an institutional process now. It's an institutional requirement. Yes, okay. And I'm seeing, so we can try. Yes, and all of the tools that we have, I mean, none of this course section 0 is meant to sort of it's not a replacement for anything that you currently do or any tools that you use. In fact, if you have tools that facilitate these workflows, then then this section 0 may be quite manageable for you and your faculty. So I think that these are all complements to each other. They're not replacements for what you have or for what's working for you. It's just designed as a complement. So I'm hoping that would be
And
yeah.
yes, Nancy, you are absolutely right. POCR should not be the first time they hear about accessibility,
Yes.
especially now with the changes in law, you know, in the what we're expected as an institution. And this is one of the reasons why Section 0 is changing in the rubric, because I think before this, the rubric required accessibility. And we heard it a lot, right? Like, why do I have to do this? Like, this isn't fair. Like, this isn't my responsibility. Well, now that the law is saying all digital content needs to be accessible, now we're kind of like, okay, it's not just the rubric. Now your college needs to be involved in these conversations.
Mhm.
Um, but as Maria Elena mentioned, I really want to reiterate that we have designed Section 0 with POCR in mind and a POCR process that makes sense in mind. However, if your institution already has a built accessibility process that works for you, then you keep that. Section 0 is not required. What we want at the end of the day, we a course that gets a QR badge needs to be accessible. How your institution gets it there, that's all up to you. We're just creating resources to try and help, not hinder. Um, okay.
So we can look at the next slide. I think that will be helpful. So when we see the word, so you'll see sometimes you'll see in the rubric that the language of the element includes the word accessible. And sometimes I think it's important that we need to have shared definition of terms for sure. And one of the things that I sometimes I've heard my own faculty say, oh, well, they can access it, but that's not what accessible means. Not that I can get to it, but that I can actually use it. So, for example, in the section for accessible instructions, or some sample language is accessible instructions clearly explain what students need to do to complete the assignment successfully and provide relevant resources. So accessible in this case means that all the content is designed with WCAG 2.1 level AA standards. So that it meets that we're all thinking the same language. We're all thinking the same thing. When we hear the word accessible, we should all go, WCAG 2.1. It's like call and response. I'm going to say accessible and you're going to say it back. And what does so that shared understanding gets woven throughout the rubric language, so that it's an assumption, a given that what's coming to the reviewer, that's what's coming through review, has already been accessible, or has already been made accessible or created with accessible or universal design for learning elements in place. So that's that sort of shared understanding. And
Yeah.
yes, you're right. There's so many things about the term accessibility that can confuse people. So in terms of Sochi, what this means for course review, you want to take this
Yes.
one?
Okay. So for course review, um, we want to talk a little bit about how we handle this. So because accessibility is embedded in the elements, reviewers could identify accessibility issues as part of the rubric rating. Accessibility is no longer checked at the end. So with the example, let me go back to this language. With this language in mind, when this is actually from the rubric, this language. This appears in the new rubric. So we're looking at a lot of different things here. One of those things are the accessible instructions. And as Marilena mentioned, accessible means that they're following these guidelines that we've mentioned. So when you're reviewing a course, then the reviewer could flag, like if the language, if like let's say they have an image, let's say their instructions are an image, and that image, I mean, it's not all text. There's all sorts of problems with this idea of this image for their instructions, right? So maybe the instructions are complete. Maybe they do guide students very well in doing the activity, but it's not accessible. Then that's when the reviewer would flag it. And they would say like, okay, yeah, this is not aligned, and yeah, you great job on giving these instructions. However, this is not accessible, and then the reviewer could talk about that. But the way that this is designed, the way the new rubric is designed, is that the POCR lead or a designated accessibility reviewer will be the one to do that final accessibility verification, because we no longer have a checklist, like a Section D checklist. The accessibility still needs to be, the course still needs to be accessible at the end of the day. It still needs to be accessible. So even though there's these built-in prompts in the rubric, just those built-in prompts are not enough. Right, Marilena? Is that your understanding? Like just the built-in prompts are not enough to be like, oh, the course is 100% accessible. Like we still need that extra accessibility check, whatever
Yes.
your college does to do
Yes.
that.
However, your college does that currently is, and if you need to make that process more robust, that this could be a help or a way to do that. I was sorry, I was looking at the chat
Sorry.
and trying
Yeah.
to think of that, but somebody said Jennifer mentioned manual checking is always needed, and I think that's what that last statement says. Yes, manual checking is important. So
So right, and a lot of us have like Pope Tech, and I saw Tidy Up in the chat, and these are all great tools, right? That can help our faculty get to more accessible courses. But
mhm.
I think we've all seen the false positives, the false negatives, like in those tools. So that's why having some sort of actual manual accessibility check is important. Um, because at the end of the day, the course does have to be accessible. Okay, so let's move on to what this means for course authors. So for course authors now, as was mentioned in the chat, it's going to become really important for our course authors to understand accessibility. And it's always been important, but I really feel that this change in law, I think this is good for us, because I feel like us in this room, we're the ones that have been shouting like, we need to make things accessible. Like these videos need closed caption. And we were seen like a lot of us have been seen as like the accessibility police, that no one has like listened to. And now we're like, oh, I told you we needed to do that. I told you that you couldn't, email a PDF as your flyer and nothing else. Like, like I do feel that this law is like kind of like, yeah, I told you so. Um, so because of that, our course authors, our faculty, hopefully will get more accessibility training. And when they come to design a course or to try to get a badge on their online course, it won't be the first time that they hear the word accessibility. And it won't be the first time they understand that they need to use bullet points instead of asterisks for their lists. So for course authors, truly, I think we can all agree that the best practice is that front loading of accessibility. It is like, let's make sure that you start your design making these pages accessible. Um, so we want to, and this is why section 0, this is why we created section 0, that second bullet point, to contextualize workflow. We wanted to make sure that when POCR is occurring, when course design is occurring, it's occurring in a way that it makes sense. The flow makes sense. And truly, um, every college has a different process, but I do believe that if we front load that accessibility piece, it's going to make the design work so much easier. Because I think we've all been there when a faculty designs a whole course and then they come to you and you're like, this looks great, but you've got to fix the accessibility in all of these pages. And then they're like, what do you mean? I've spent like hundreds of hours already. So front loading, it is probably the right move, but every college works different. Um, let's see. Design with accessibility in mind for the beginning and address issues as part of the development process, not after the review. That really is the goal. But again, stressing that every college has their own process and
Mhm.
you don't have to change a process that already works for you. That's really important.
And that's a really good segue into our our first breakout discussion. And Sochi will be putting you into this. And Sochi, we have a Google Doc.
We do. It's in linked in our
Oh, it's
little
in the
agenda.
agenda. Okay, I'll
You
take
have
care
it
of that.
there.
But Julie asked this question also. How do you suggest their college does revises? But this is what we'd like you to talk about in your small groups. One is what is your current accessibility review process? How is it handled? Not the student accommodation portion, but how is accessibility of design and digital content? And then how does section 0 change your process, or do you see it changing your process? And so there are some brainstorm things that you can think about, poker leads, ensuring, and what conversation do you need to have happen? So I will put into the chat, I will put into, maybe I will, oh yes, group discussion number 1, shared content. That's the one. Is that the one, Sochi?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll put that into the chat. So you can share out.
So as we put you in these breakout rooms, you can have that Google Doc open. That has these same questions for you guys to talk about. And if you want to add, it is an edit. You can edit the document, so you can add your ideas to that document. Because that'll be really helpful for us actually to
Mhm,
just
mhm.
get those ideas and see where you guys are at. Um, we are going to give you, I want to give you enough time. So I'm going to say about 15 minutes in the breakout rooms. So and you'll have hopefully enough people in there to have a good discussion. But we'll be popping in and checking in on you. Okay? Any questions? I'm going to go ahead and create them and open them. All right, you guys. See you in a bit. All right. So anybody want to share what poker leads and reviewers can do to help ensure accessible courses?
Nancy.
Nancy.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that it's going to all boil down to training before we hit the poker process, or at the bare minimum at the beginning of it. Before you ever look at a specific course, you need to understand accessibility. And so we do at my college, and I think what we discovered in our small group is that we're all doing a lot of training. Some of us are doing only one-on-one training. Some of us are doing it as we pop in and see the errors. We're reaching out and saying, hey, I see this, let me teach you how not to do that again. And some of us have more formalized training. But without training before you hit the poker process, you hit such a wall of resistance that you can't really get past it too well, and it doesn't stick. So they might fix that class, but as soon as they edit it, they're going to make it not ADA compliant. So it's all about training.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nancy. Good point. Anyone else have any ideas or something that works at their college that they do? I do think that I think training is key. Training before they get to the review.
Mhm.
All right, let me ask the next question then. How can poker leads and reviewers help ensure accessible? Oh wait, did I already ask that one?
Yeah, it's the conversation
Sorry.
question. Yep. What conversation do you need to have to secure institutional support structures? What were some of the thoughts around that?
I'll go. I'll share something.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that we found very helpful at Chafee was coordinating with institutional research to get data on the success rates for folks who have aligned thus far. I'll drop the results of both of our studies in the chat. One thing I'll emphasize is this: we had one study from fall 2022. At the time, we had, I don't know, I don't think this is some great secret, so
No.
I'll just say it. We had like about $7,000 set aside for poker alignment. But it was a fall 2022 study. Ambitious person that I am, having just started last year, I thought, like, could we do better? So we commissioned a new study, came out fall 2025 with much more robust numbers because we had been aligning in that time. We now have something like 40 grand devoted to poker alignment
Can't
because we
beat
have the
winning
numbers to
limit,
back
right?
it up. So I'll drop
That's
those links in the chat right now in case
Thank-
anyone wants to see what we're doing.
that's
Thanks,
great.
Ryan.
Thanks.
And that's actually, I'll go ahead and share the next part of our little presentation because I think that helps with the discussion that we'll have next, ensuring consistent alignment across courses or across the course. So one thing that Marilyn and I talked about last week as we were getting this ready is how hard it is to align a course. Like getting a course aligned is such a it's such a big task. It's a big task for the reviewer, for the poker lead, for the course author, the faculty member. Like it truly is a team effort to get that course fully aligned, except plus accessibility, right? And what Ryan shared about having, these studies conducted in our individual colleges is so important and so powerful. And one thing that I want to emphasize is coming from a small college and basically the only person that does this work at my college, we don't have to have a great number of badge courses every year. But if you have a few badge courses every year, it'll eventually add up. And if you're able to track those courses through your institutional research department, and you can slowly start seeing the progress at your own college. I think that's what's important. I think that's what Chafee has done. They've just like taken and they've like kind of been following the courses that are badged to see how that's affecting the student success. So don't overwhelm yourselves by thinking like, oh, I have to have like all of these courses to, like you can start small. It is okay to start small. And Cheryl, I see your hand.
Find my button. How are you all?
Good, how
Great.
are
Thank
you?
you.
Good. Well, I can't do two things at one time, as you know. Okay. How about the our girl Ellie Constantine? I'm putting it in the chat now. The bots that she's creating for accessible content, we need to use that power. So we need to get like a committee. I know there's courses at One that teach instructors how to do this, but this one avenue is going to take all of those words out of our vocabulary. It's too hard to align a course. It's not going to be if we can take the roadmap of take a page, make it accessible, move on. And I'd love to strip those words out of the whole conversation. It's not that hard if we do it this way, step by step, right? Well, it doesn't matter if it's a bot. We can do whatever you want to get the pages accessible, but it's not as hard as it used to be, is what I'm trying to say, right? Because we have the tools now, whether it's Pope Tech or any of the other ones. So great job. The rubric is coming along. I hope it coincides with, and I hear what whoever said that, another bot. We need to get a bag of bots, maybe, or I don't know how to say it. Like, here's two you can use and get through the rubric.
That, Cheryl, I'm going to piggyback on that for just a second, because that is exactly what we're thinking about. We not thinking, but we're planning on the POCR website. We're going to have a page where we collect all of these, like, what'd you call it? A bag of bots. We're going to collect all of these bots because people are doing amazing things out there
Right,
and
right,
creating amazing tools. And we want to have them in one place where people can access them. So thank you. I love.
right. And I think the chancellor's office started doing that with some of the uh, workshops that have been going on lately. So great job. We do need oh, I know. How about a beach for the bag of bots? It'll be right in time for OTC.
There you go.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, so, and that really does help us segue to, making sure that our courses are aligned and what we're doing to make sure that our courses are aligned. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because as we're redesigning the rubric, it's hard not to reflect on all the work that has been done with previous teams at CVC, when it was OEI and then CVC at one, and now it's CVC. Like, it really has allowed me to reflect on everything that has changed. And just to give you those of you that don't know, a quick short history lesson. So a long time ago, when courses were first being reviewed, CVC had a team of reviewers, and you would submit your course with this review team, and two people would review your course. This is the process I went through when I got my course badged. And then my course was reviewed. Then I was giving an instructional designer, which was Helen, the wonderful and great Helen. And then Helen and I worked through the unaligned, the incomplete sections of my course, and we revised them to make the entire course aligned. But we literally went page by page, correcting every single page in my course. And that was the process that everybody that got a badge back then would go through. You would have your instructional designer and you would go page by page. It was a page by page review. Then, things have changed and it's evolved. And now colleges are now local POCR certified. And one of the really important things to keep in mind is that when your college is local POCR certified, you're able to assign badges to the courses at your college. But it is up to each one of us, each of the POCR leads and the review teams, to ensure that the courses are truly aligned and that they are deserving of a badge. We want to make sure that we keep that bar as high as we possibly can, knowing what the struggles are. So I wanted to throw that out there to make sure that we're keeping that bar up high. And that's the purpose of these sessions, is to ensure that we are all looking for the same things in our courses. And that's hard to do because even with your own review team, if you do norming sessions with your own review team, you find that your own team isn't quite as normed as you'd like them to be. As a POCR lead, I speak for myself. So thinking of us statewide, then that becomes even more difficult. So I wanted to kind of give us that reminder. So what does a thorough course review look like when determining an alignment? What does your college do to ensure this? And it's important because that QR badge means something. It means something to possibly your college administration, but it means something to us as reviewers and as poker leads. So we want to make sure that that bar continues to be set high. Because as I said, I think in the first hour, aligning your course to the rubric does result in a high quality course for our students. And student success will follow. And we've seen it in the different studies that have occurred in the colleges in our system. And Marilena, do you want to take this one? Local context matters.
Yes, I will. The local context. And I think that we had talked a little bit about this earlier, but I think what is important is that we understand, everyone understands that review structures will vary across institutions. Some are big, some are small. We know that time, staffing, training, and workflow all go into shaping the review process and what that looks like. And we also know that some colleges may have additional local checks and supports in place that other colleges may or may not have. So importantly, it's incumbent on all of us who are leading review teams or who are getting review teams together or are part of a review team that we take some time to reflect on our review processes and make sure they're designed to meet the needs of our particular institution. So there's no one size fits all. And we know that this is going to be a really good opportunity to reflect on those processes and how they support the strong and the credible course review. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation in our next at our next poker meeting locally. So go to the next slide. And so when I'm thinking about this conversation that I will be having or want to have with my team, and that will be, what are we using to determine that alignment is consistent across the courses? So those norming sessions that we might have locally, talking about it, working through some of those pain points or pinch points, and then what is the evidence that we're going to need to make the confident decision, and that might change based on some of the rubric language changes. So there are going to have to be ways that we look at things differently, and there are going to be ways that we look at things the same. So but in our own local teams, we'll have to figure that out. And will there be elements that require review across the full course rather than just limited examples? So, and that may or may not change. And then finally, working through and ensuring that your local process results in a thorough review. So how are you defining that? What is that going to look like? What additional support training you might need to provide to the reviewers on your team?
And then we just wanted to pose these questions to discuss with your local team. How does a review team determine consistency across a course? What does a thorough review look like with your team in your college? And will your team need to reassess the review scope? And we brought these questions to you because we feel that with the new rubric, with the adoption of the new rubric, which your team will have to go through a process, depending on what your college's process is, right? You'll have to go through a process to adopt that new rubric. We want you to reflect on your local process and how that's going, and if it's working, and if changes need to be made, this could be a good time to start thinking about those changes in your local process. And how do we ensure that the course is aligned across the entire course, which again, it's a big task. But how do we do that in a way that is smooth, that makes sense, and that we're really supporting our faculty, and as poker leads, that we're really supporting our review team? So anyway, things to consider. And we're almost out of time. So I'll leave you with a few updates. I'm sorry, like this felt super duper fast for us. Not enough time ever, but some updates. So again, in the summer, we're gonna have, oh, sorry, we will have no poker training this summer. So usually we offer poker training for new reviewers in the summer, the spring, like every semester we have these offerings. We're not offering any during the summer because that training is going to change. We will have in July, we're going to kick off our webinars for the current poker reviewers. So more information will be sent to the poker leads on that. But July will be our initial kickoff, and we'll be offering that webinar over and over throughout the year. So that'll just be our first webinar in July, sometime in July. Don't have a date yet. The new rubric will be released at OTC 2026. Hopefully you'll be there. If you are, please stop by and say hi to Marilena and myself. We'll be at the CBC table and of course walking around OTC. Early adoption of the rubric will be will be next academic year, 2026 through 2027, with full implementation fall 2027. That is all for today. Thank you so much for attending. If you have a question, feel free to email us directly or support@cbc.edu. I will get those questions and I will happily answer them. Thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for your patience in stumbling through these 2 hours. But hopefully you got some good information. It's always so great to meet with all of you. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you all soon.